Greetings, listeners, and welcome to The Spiritual Experience, a show where we share stories of life, love, and redemption for all of humanity on Earth. So sit back and enjoy. Try to identify with the speakers and not compare. Don't forget to subscribe on all podcast platforms. I'm your host, Jay Lewis, and here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spiritual Experience. Thank you so much for joining us. Please don't forget to like, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, everywhere else, Google Podcasts, wherever you get, wherever you listen to your stuff. Anyway, I wanted to take this time and really introduce you to somebody who's pivotal in my life. Throughout my career in recovery, I've had three sponsors, and this is the current one. The other one I had for a long time. This one I'll have for a long time as well. Super spiritual guy that I've known and admired for a long time, and I can't wait to hear more about him. So everybody say hello to Yariv. Yariv, say hello.
Hey, guys.
All right, so first things first, where are you from?
I am from Israel, right now living in Brooklyn.
All right. Do you have siblings? What was it like growing up in Israel?
I actually did not grow up in Israel. When I was 2 years old, my father used to work in Africa. So we moved to Africa, Nigeria. I spent 3 years in Nigeria, and then 1 year in Uganda, 1 year in Kenya.
What kind of work did your dad do?
Israel used to do construction work, building roads and stuff like this in Africa.
Right.
So my father was engineer, I guess. He was an engineer.
It was only you, or you had brothers and sisters?
No, just me. Only child.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So what was it like moving around like that when you were younger?
Jared, I don't have a lot of memories, but I think my memory starts when I was about 6.
Right.
So I don't remember much from Africa. But if I'll, refer to later years, for me, what it's like growing up, I loved it. Somehow I turned it into a positive thing. The fact that I didn't mention it yet, but I didn't grow up with my parents really.
Right.
And I was very proud of it from a very young age.
How did that happen?
In Africa, my parents divorced in Nigeria.
Right.
And when I was 6, they sent me by myself back to Israel. And as of that age 6, I kept moving from one place to another. First 1 year with my grandparents, and then a kibbutz. I don't know if you know what a kibbutz is. It's like a commune. They used to be popular in Israel. They still are in some way. And so I had a very, hectic in a way, Dickens-like childhood. But I was having the time of my life because I felt bad for all the other kids that had parents who tell them, you got to do homework, you got to be here at a certain time, you got to, I felt, by now I understand it was a defense mechanism, but I loved it.
At the time, you were like Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you finally settle down? How old were you when you were just staying in one place?
22 years ago today. Today's my anniversary.
Oh,
today.
Congratulations.
I didn't tell you, yeah. So I would say, 22 years ago today, I settled down, Up until 22 years ago, I kept moving.
Yeah? Well, what was that like? So you were growing up, you get out of high school, did you graduate?
No, didn't finish high school.
Right. So where were you living?
I lived in kibbutzim up until, different kibbutzim, up until I was 16 maybe.
Right.
And then I lived for 1 year in my mother's house, but she wasn't there. She lived in a different city.
Right. She was back in Israel?
That's back in Israel, yeah.
Right. Where was your dad?
They divorced.
Right.
When I was 3 years old. So first year in Nigeria, they divorced. And where was my dad? He got married, remarried, have his own family in Israel.
Did you see them both at all or no?
My mother, I saw more. My father, he would come visit me, every now and then.
Wow.
And the gap between every now and then got bigger and bigger. So after I was maybe 16, 17, it would have been few years between seeing him.
How did you feel about that?
I didn't feel anything. I don't think I don't remember feeling any way.
Right, no resentment or anything.
No, not at all.
When did drugs and alcohol enter the story?
I don't think, I know. At 13-year-old or so, I drank for the first time can of beer with 2 older guys. Loved it.
Right away?
Right away, loved it. Loved 2 things. First, the effect, but there was something, maybe more. The 2 older guys were impressed with me that I drank it so quickly.
Really?
They say, oh my God, look at this guy. And now that I think back, I think I really needed to impress people.
You might have also needed the drink.
And the drink, yeah.
You didn't even know that you needed it till you got it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that started it all. You get everything. You get adoration from other people.
Exactly.
You get validation.
That's right. Yeah.
And you get to feel a little bit. You finally belonged. You belong. So where did that take you? So you're like 13, and then by what, 15, 16, still on that road?
So I tell you, 13, drank for the first time. 14, I think I smoked hash for the first time. And again, fell in love. That's the way I phrase it now, because it was very powerful because of what you said. And it has a very powerful effect. And at 17, snorted heroin for the first time, and now really fell in love.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you now you're 17, 18. You're pretty much on your own. No.
On my own in Tel Aviv. This, more or less a street kid in Tel Aviv, and 19-year-old army. I wanted to get out of the army in Israel. Eventually, I did get out. I spent a bunch of times locked up in the army. At 20, I think I was 20, I was 21 maybe, they released me from the army.
How long were you there? 2 years, no?
You
have to, man.
You're supposed to mandate it is 3 years. I did a year and a half.
And they had enough?
They had enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody had enough. And a day after I returned the uniform and everything, I was in Amsterdam.
What was happening over there?
Nothing. It's pretty standard. People in Israel, right after the army, they leave the country, for however you want to, looking for themselves, adventures, all that.
Was that your phone?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you end up in Amsterdam. How long were you there?
1 year in Amsterdam. After 1 year, the police stopped me, locked me up for 2 weeks. Sorry, and then sent me back to Israel on an airplane.
Right. What were you doing in Amsterdam? Were you working, or what were you doing?
No, I wasn't working. Trying to sell cocaine. That's about it.
Nothing good.
Nothing good.
Now, were you addicted to drugs yet, or no?
I don't think, no, not yet. Doing heroin, doing cocaine, but not yet, didn't get what we call a habit yet.
Right.
But it was,
on its way.
It was on its way, for sure.
Yeah. So what happens when you get back to Israel?
Back to Israel, that's right after being locked up for 2 weeks. My mom didn't recognize me. In what happened in Israel? At first I figured I'm going back to Amsterdam. That didn't happen. If I'm not mistaken, Jared, that was a long time ago. If I think that's when I met my first wife, Ronit,
Right.
right after Amsterdam.
Where did you
Yeah,
meet her?
I did. She was renting a room. I was somewhere in the north of Israel. I don't know what I was doing in the north, traveling, we'll call it, the north of Israel.
Yeah, you're like some bohemian
Yeah,
hipster before hipsters.
something like this. And then I went to visit my mom, and she told me that a young girl, 18-year-old, rented a room. And that's it. That was Ronit, my first wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you know when you saw her that you wanted to marry her?
You know, I tell you a crazy story, Jared. I went to visit my mom. My mom, we sit in the kitchen. She said there's a young girl who rent a room. I didn't see her. I just heard, you know. That night I went out, you know, drinking and the whole thing. At 4 a.m, I came back. My mom lived on the first floor. She had her own house, and it was, you know. And I climbed through the window into the room of that girl. I took my clothes off, and I went into her bed.
No way.
I had never seen her before, and she kicked me out.
That was a blackout.
No, it wasn't a blackout.
Oh,
I figured, good idea, give it a shot.
Oh, it's crazy.
And she kicked me out, and so I went out, of course. And the next morning I saw her, and I think I fell in love with her right away. 3 months later, we got married.
Wow. How long were you married?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
You lived in Israel the whole time?
Started in Israel. First year in Israel, me and her and me, we moved to the north of Israel, where I became a shepherd of this guy who owned 50 sheep and goats in the north of Israel. And I was his shepherd for 1 year. After 1 year, both of us, Ronit and I, came to New York. And that's it. The next 4 years we spent, first year in New York and then California.
How long were you in California?
I think 4 or 5 years. The first 3 with Ronit, then we separated. I was in San Diego, she moved to Los Angeles, and yeah.
Yeah. And then the story begins. California, you're a single guy. San Diego.
San Diego, yeah. Actually, Ronit and I got back together. We moved together to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
She opened a clothing store that was pretty successful. I went to art school. 2 actually, Academy of Art and the Art Institute in San Francisco. Sorry. And I think we've been 2 years, maybe 2-3 years in San Francisco, and then we split.
Right.
And then I moved to New York by myself.
Yeah. What was it like living here by yourself at that time? Were you partying all the time?
I was trying to, Jared, my whole life I was trying to party. Looking back, I don't think I partied much.
No.
I tried to, I don't know what, what do you mean party?
Yeah, like lose control, drink and drug every day.
I drank and drank. For me, party, when I say party, I mean, what comes to my mind is sex.
Yeah.
I was trying, I was doing my best every now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of work were you doing when you got here?
Construction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty easy. It was very easy, actually, to make money. 1986, 7, 85, 86, 87 was very easy to make money in construction. So,
did you have any of those skills, or were you just hiring guys and putting the deals together?
both. I had a little bit of skills, and I was hiring guys.
Yeah. And you stayed roughly in that business for a long time, no?
Yeah. That's the only business I was in, yeah.
Yeah, construction.
Yeah.
It's nice. Okay, so then now you're living in New York. How long are you living here or living this way until the next wife comes?
So the next wife was Isha. I'm not sure. I'm probably living here for 6, 7, 8 years. And then I meet Isha. Isha is an American girl who lives in Bali, Indonesia.
Right.
And that's it. She came with a friend to I was a painter. Actually, I forgot. I was an artist. I was making a living out of, wow. Can't believe I forgot it.
Yeah?
Yeah, because all my life I was kind of Yariv the painter. I was an artist, yeah.
What were you painting?
People. And anyhow, so a friend of mine came to visit with Isha. And I, fell in love with her from the first moment I saw her. And 3 months later, I moved to Bali, Indonesia. That's where Isha lived. She was a jeweler. She used to, do Bali, New York a lot. So then we both started to,
It's like 2 successful women in a row.
You're right.
It's pretty impressive.
It's very good, Jared. I never thought about it like
Yeah.
this.
I mean, look,
That's
it's
right.
pretty impressive.
Yeah. Isha, very successful.
What was going on in Bali?
Isha lived there.
Yeah.
She built a house there, beautiful house, in a small Bolognese village called Canggu, if I remember. It is Canggu. And that's it. She would have 2 girls, doing her jewelry. I was there painting.
Were you having success painting also over there?
Yeah. Yes, in a small scale. I'm not non-painter, but I did in Bali. I had a show. I sold the first painting I sold there in 1992 or 93, something like this. I got $5,000 for the first painting I sold. I sold few. It's a lot of money, $5,000 in
For a
92
painting?
in
It's
Bali.
a lot of money now.
In Bali. It
Yeah.
goes a long, long way, yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So
Yeah.
how long did you stay there?
5 years on Bali, New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Next, we split, Isha and I, just happened. And exactly then, I met Tamra, my third wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so these are the 2 big things my third wife, I got together with Tamra. We spent some time in Brazil, broke up for a few months, got back together, and got married.
Where did you meet Tamara?
I thought I turned it off.
You got to turn that off and throw it out the window.
You know I'm popular.
Yeah.
Tamra I met in the East Village.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Same thing. Fell in love right away?
Fell in love right away. Yeah.
That's a theme.
It is a thing, yeah.
Yeah, you fell in love right away with that can of beer, each of the wives, with the travel, the freedom.
By now, Jared, being in love is a big thing.
Sure.
In that state, in love. And you're right, not necessarily with women.
Just with
It's
life.
that can of beer. Well, it's with life, you can say, but more specifically, beer, then hash, then heroin, then the women, Ronit, Isha, Tamra.
Yeah. So where did you guys settle down?
Well, like I said, we moved to Brazil. We broke up in Brazil. She stayed there a little bit longer. I went back to Israel. And then we decided to get back together. And I had a place in the East Village. And I think shortly after we decided to get married.
Yeah.
And shortly after I got sober, which bring us to 22 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's when I can say I settled down.
Yeah. So what led you to, like, when we remember things the way that we need to, right?
Mm.
So obviously you're almost like James Bond, living in all these different countries, these different women, all these other things going on. Meanwhile, you obviously said, you gave a list of, here is Yariv, but this is what's on the menu: alcohol, hash, heroin, women, madness. I mean, it's not a, it's not like a good menu, right? So how did that all come to an end where you finally said, okay, listen, I need to get sober. Something needs to change. Were you suffering at the end? You had to have been. Even though it sounds like, like some fancy story. And you're not fancy. You're a regular guy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about suffering, Jared. By now, I have a different take on suffering. I think when you're getting high, it's hard to suffer. The lifestyle is terrible. You're broke. I was broke. I ran into a lot of problems. So in that respect, I suffered. But it's hard for me to call it suffering. It was just a terrible way to live. I'll tell you why it's hard for me to call it suffering. By now, I think that, and I think it's very simple, but I think without alcohol or drugs and without spirituality, that's where the potential for real suffering is.
Absolutely.
In other words, it's not the circumstances, it's the state of mind.
State of being.
The state of being, the state of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did the bottom come?
It's a little bit of a mystery, but 22 years ago, my wife was 8 months pregnant.
With the oldest kid?
With Ty, my first son,
Yeah.
And somehow I ran into a friend and in the East Village, and I kept going in and out of the program, in and out of AA for 10 years, AA.
Yeah.
And that date, today, 22 years ago, he saw me, he said, let's go to a meeting. And we went to a meeting, and that's why I told you that the theme of being in love it's a big, it's a beautiful way to put it. I fell in love with AA. So it was hash, alcohol, heroin, the women, but then fell in love with AA.
Did you not love AA when you were bouncing in and
No.
out for 10 years?
No, that's it. It's very, there's a distinction.
There's a pivot.
I loved it. I thought, wow, great thing. And I realized also I have a problem with drugs and alcohol. I had no idea that I had a problem before that. But I was not in love. Big difference between love and in love.
Yeah.
So I just thought that's great, but it wasn't strong enough for me to
Stay continuous, to surrender.
surrender, exactly, and to not drink, not use.
So when you show up at this one meeting, something different happens.
Yeah. Yeah, we have in 12-step, we have this phrase we call pink cloud. And there's not enough talk about it, about pink cloud. What is it really, pink cloud? How come it happens? What is, and so on.
Right.
But basically, I think it's very similar to being in love. Like you have this silly smile on your face from morning to night, and you're not sure why. Everything looks fantastic. Things are bouncing off of you very easily.
Nothing can go wrong.
Nothing can go wrong, exactly. You know what I mean? So that happens, and that happens to people. It's not, no one think his way into a pink cloud.
I think that it's similar to the magic that happens with that first can of beer.
That's what I'm saying. In love.
Yeah, yeah. It's like
It
you
just-
finally you
yeah.
belong, and then here
Yeah.
you are
That's right.
in a meeting after bouncing in and out for 10 years. So being in recovery, like very peripherally. So you're like around,
Yeah,
but you're not in.
that's right.
And then the magic happens. It didn't happen the day before. It didn't happen any other time.
Right. Yeah.
Just this one time, you show up and the magic happens.
Exactly.
How do you feel when you leave that meeting? Do you know that the magic happened yet, or was
No, you're not
it cognizant, right?
completely conscious. You're semi-conscious. It's very physical. You're a pink cloud. It's and that's good enough. You know what I mean? I'm not conscious. I can't verbalize it. I'm not, but I'm enthusiastic and hopeful without knowing it.
Right.
I'm energized.
What do you tell Tamara when you get home? This time it's going to be different?
I think she knew. I can't remember exactly. I think she knew that. She was 8 months pregnant.
The pressure was on.
Subconsciously, the pressure was on. Yeah,
Were you working?
here and there, as usual, selling paintings. Yeah,
Selling paintings, little
And
construction
working.
stuff? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So once you surrendered and you really took the plunge, it's
Yeah.
a big deal. And mind you, you've been taking these blind plunges your whole life, going
Yeah.
from city to city, country to country, woman to woman. Like,
Right.
so these almost impulsive actions that you take that just puts you in these scenarios that you end up living in for 5 years at a time, right?
That's right.
So this time it's different, and you don't need any more convincing.
Yeah, that's right. Let me answer a question you didn't ask, which is what happened, or, my spiritual awakening,
Right.
which is, So on day 7 of, being in our program, a few days earlier, I asked this guy, younger guy, to be my sponsor, Jesse. And on day 7, I felt very uncomfortable, I guess anxious. And I called Jesse in the morning around 10 o'clock. I called him on a telephone. And he didn't have time to talk. And so he said the answer, and very quickly said, "Don't worry, take it easy, I'll call you later." And he hung up the phone. And the second he hung up the phone, I felt good. The anxiety was gone, like it wasn't there. And it was, I remember, it was mostly in the stomach. I wasn't very conscious of it, but I remember it. It was a physical thing. And a couple of hours later, I went to NYU, the meeting.
Yeah, it's a good meeting.
It's a good meeting. And at the meeting, I had my first insight, I guess. And I was sitting there, and insight are very powerful things that happened internally. And the insight was, my thoughts don't mean so much. My thoughts don't need to control me. And it blew my mind. So I was sitting in a meeting looking like everybody else, and internally it was very big. And
Like an awakening.
yeah, it was very significant, very big, like an internal explosion. My thoughts don't need to control me. And I remember thinking that up until that moment, thinking while sitting there, if when a thought came to me, and I'm referring to the thought of drinking or using chem, that's it, was an end of story. I could not be stopped. I couldn't stop myself.
Yeah.
So that it was big. And, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, actually I can think it, but it doesn't have to mean that much. And an hour later, I was walking home, and I had another insight. And this time it was just as big, and it was, maybe my feelings don't have to mean that much. Maybe I can feel whatever, but it don't have to believe in it, don't have to allow it to control me. And that was the day. That's my spiritual awakening. So to put all three of them together, I know how not to worry, take it easy, don't believe my mind so much, and don't believe my feelings so much. 22 years later, that's in a way, I think that's the heart of my sobriety. That's the heart of my life, maybe, the heart of my...
Your state of being.
And my spiritual understanding, yeah.
For me, I remember that I would hear people say these things that didn't make sense at the time, and then over time they make perfect sense. In a way of, somebody would say, listen, first thought, wrong thought. And it's just a very simple, like almost like a throwaway phrase, like especially in early recovery, because many of us, I don't know anybody who comes, who needs recovery or comes and tries to get our help that is not impulsive and a little bit gullible. It's not a good combination when you have a physical addiction. So if you're gullible to those ideas, and you get a little impulsive, like you said, you would think drink, think drug, think woman, and
it's got to happen.
There's no stopping you. The other guy would, somebody else. These are all things that I learned over so many years that still ring true to this day. Speaking of the word ring, they would always tell me, like, listen, you cannot unring the bell. When that bell rings, the bell has rung.
Right.
So in between that time where you're going to go and reach, you're going to need us, and you're going to need God. And you're going to need a relationship with us, and you're going to need a relationship with Him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, I just said, okay. But I didn't know that those days would all come to pass in trying to live a regular life that is more than palatable. At minimum, it's palatable. I can take it. That's the minimum. And I can take it without drinking, but I don't want to just endure. It goes from turning from defense to offense.
Right.
Where, like, how do I adapt these principles in my life? And now I'm on the offensive. Now it doesn't matter what comes. Something's going to come. We spoke about that Banksy painting with the guy with the umbrella and the little kid in the rain. My first sponsor when we were going through the work, his name was Andy, and I met him at 74 Below. It was Trinity Church at the 12:30 noon meeting. Incredible meeting. It was called Exchange Views, right next to the stock exchange when I was down there doing my thing. I remember I had about 6 months, and I was doing my 4th step, and I went by the coffee table, and I was complaining about the columns, and there were other people there who were also counting days at the same time as me, and that was the first time that I realized that not everybody does it. I thought everybody was doing the work. And I got so angry. And I went to him and I said, listen, are you telling me that not everybody does this? I'm sitting here doing all this extra homework, quote unquote, and not everybody's doing it. And he says, and he only had maybe a year more than me at the time. And he said, look, that's true. But the point is that you're going to need to have done this work when it rains.
Right.
You're going to need it. When it's raining already, it's too late. You know, so you might as well do it now. He says, and he said it very seriously the way I'm looking at you now. He says, I promise you it's going to rain. I promise. Yeah. This is the beginning. And this is where we need to be. And I said, and magically, he led me up until that point. So I just said, okay, I didn't have anywhere else to go except for meetings or back into the dungeon. And I had already turned my back on the dungeon.
Right.
So you already have this internal dialogue. You have this spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. And then you started on your journey.
Right.
So what happened next?
Well, my son was born a few weeks after that day, a month after I got sober, so 3 weeks later. And so I'm a father now, a husband, a father, stay home dad. My wife went back to work. I was stay home dad.
You living in the city?
Living in Brooklyn. Yeah, for one more year, living in the East Village, and then we moved to Brooklyn. Actually, no. A year before my son was born, we moved to Brooklyn.
All right, so you're living in Brooklyn now?
Living in Brooklyn.
She goes back to work. You have a newborn kid. You're newly sober.
1 month sober, yeah. I'm a stay-home dad, yeah. It turns out that being a stay-home dad was, fit me like a glove. I enjoyed it. And that's it. So I'm stay-home dad, and I'm a very enthusiastic member of 12-step, of AA.
Yeah.
That's understatement. As enthusiastic as can be.
Right. So you start on this new life that requires also stability. Right? If you're going to be somebody's dad.
Yeah.
Somebody's leaving their kid with you. Meanwhile, months ago, you wouldn't have made a good babysitter.
That's right.
Yeah. So are you going to meetings every day? Are you making time for the program? Like, what were you doing?
Going to meetings every day. Yeah. Program was very clear to me within 2 weeks. And I remember starting to talk, I was talking a lot about it. And because it was an experience, it wasn't an intellectual, it wasn't thoughts, it was an experience. 2 things. How can I keep my enthusiasm? Because I think I understood that the enthusiasm for AA can wear off. And
easily.
Right.
A little bit at a time.
That's right. So I understood, and I remember saying again and again, sharing it and thinking it and talking about it. How can I keep my enthusiasm? How can I keep the fire alive? That was the first thing. And the other thing that I experienced, and again, it was experience, it wasn't thoughts, the more I do, the better I feel. Not the better I do. The more I do, the better I feel.
Right.
And feeling is, I believe that's what it's all about. I want to feel good.
We were talking about love, right?
Exactly. I want to remain in that state of being in love.
Yeah.
That's exactly, yeah.
So.
And I was not shocked, but I was surprised. I just do more and I feel better. And that's, again, put those 2 together. Keep the enthusiasm and do more and more. And they feed each other. And 22 years to the day later, that's it. I did today a lot.
So when is a difference between, well, now when you're looking back, similar to when I look back, I can see the vein of spirituality growing in my life, but at the time I'm just executing, right?
Yeah.
AA, NA, all 12-step programs, they're not vague. For those of you who don't know, they're not vague. They're very,
Right.
very black and white. They say things like, half measures avail us nothing. That's the end of the sentence. There's no, yeah, but, oh, you don't understand, by the way, I have this kid. None of that. Half measures avail us nothing. You know, we stood at the turning point, standing there, but we have to take action, and we have to do these things. And seemingly, in the beginning, you don't think that they're going to work, because it doesn't. That's the other tricky part of the program, is that it doesn't look like it's going to work. But when you have nothing else, and then you're building on these initially like little pieces of God and spirituality and relief from yourself into your life by going to meetings, getting into the literature, having recovery be the foundation of your life, and then eventually God being the foundation of your life. You know, your higher power, whatever you want to call it. You know, that happens a very little bit at a time.
Right.
You know, but it requires commitment and consistency. You know, so eventually you end up having another kid.
Yeah. 3 years later, Taja was born.
Right. What was that like?
But it's you know, it was beautiful. Now I'm a father of 2, but that's it. I'm a father. I'm a stay-home dad. I'm really, and I loved it, which is, it's not a given. I'm saying it's not a given because, you know, as a stay-home father, I met enough stay-home fathers, and of course, plenty of stay-home dad, stay-home moms, you know, in Park Slope. And it's, you know, I was conscious that I'm having the time of my life, that it fits me like a glove, that I love doing it. And,
Yeah.
that was pretty unique.
Yeah, I think it's also maybe your perception was different.
Completely, yeah. It's completely connected to the spiritual awakening that I have, my enthusiasm for AA, which I always put it first before being a father. That's the, you know, but yeah, they feed each other.
When I moved into Brooklyn, I knew that there were plenty of times when I could have been at home with my son, helping him with homework and doing these other things or whatever. And I put recovery first. I put the meeting first. Listen, there's nothing that can go on in life that can't wait 1 hour.
That's right.
Now, in that time it takes to surrender to that idea, you know, there's torture because you think, oh, I need to be here, I need to do this, I need to do that. I have to answer these phone calls, I have to answer whatever. And it took me a long time to, I said it in the meeting, I say it all the time, especially when I go and I speak, because I had 2 years or something. I don't know how much time I had. It wasn't very long. And my friend Alex Alahalde, who I love dearly, not the other Alex, he looked at me one day in the meeting because I was like texting or something. He says, if you have your phone on in the meeting, you don't have the third step. And I was, same with all the other recovery literature. It's unadulterated truth. I'm not a fireman. I'm not a cop. I'm not on duty. There's nothing. And now I leave the phone off.
Yeah.
But, and let me tell you, It's funny because now when somebody has problems in their life or whatever, somebody's going through stuff. A lot of times the formula is very simple. I tell them, say, listen, before we get into any fancy methods, if you just, why don't you go to a meeting every day, turn your phone off and just sit in the front. And if after a week, if you're still having this much of a 5-alarm fire, then maybe there's other things that can be done. It's putting AA first.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's putting recovery first, whatever program you're in. It's my formula is I put, recovery and then God, because that's the order it goes for me. Without, I do the recovery actions. I get God in my life. I get that spirituality. Then I can take a deep breath. And I can do it at any point of the day. When did you, it's always an important question for me to ask you, when did you start your meditation practice?
It's funny, I was in a meeting today, and the guy talked about, it's a step 11 meeting.
Yeah.
And the guy kept talking about meditation. And I'm very, very quickly, I get very suspicious when I hear meditation, because where is the prayer? Anyhow.
Right.
I pray in meditation, because for me, prayer is a little bit above meditation. It's all, very important to pray.
Elaborate.
To say exactly, use words, open the mouth, say, yeah. I started very quick, within months, if not weeks, of 22 years ago. And that's, for me, prayer and meditation is the center. It's where it's happening. When I say where it's happening, what I mean is where I'm, to say it quick, in a short way, where on a daily basis I'm activating that state of being in love.
Yeah.
More than meetings, yeah. Prayer and meditation.
And you're very committed.
As committed as can be, yeah.
So what do you think about when you gain suspicion? How do you react to that internally?
That's a big one. So let me see, how do I answer this? It's a very, very good question, very important. In other words, the question is how to react when I spot, let's use our language, character defects in other people. How do I react? In meetings especially.
When you smell bullshit.
All right, you can say you can say it like this. But it's not bullshit. That's the thing. It's not really bullshit. So I'll tell you a short thing I heard a while ago. I think I said it to you. It's a tale about 3 very spiritual people. And the first one would be with people, and he couldn't see anything wrong with them. He just could not see anything wrong with anyone. He was a very highly spiritual guy. The second one was a little bit above him, in other words, more spiritual. He would be with people, he could see all their wrongs, all their character defects, and he forgave them. And then there's the third guy, and he was really the most spiritual. He would be with people, he would see their wrongs, and he would love it. He would love their wrongs. And I love that story. It's not a story, I loved it. But so what happened to me, often in meetings, I get very critical. I hear, like the guy today, meditation, and after 2 minutes, because by now I have experience, I say, so this is only half of the step 11 in the most, direct way. It's simple, like you said, the program is simple, and the step says,
Prayer
solve through prayer and meditation. So what happened there? Something happened. And I know what happened, so I know what happened because God is a tough topic. And it's even tougher to really experience God, very tough. And so what happens to me, it's very, I get, upset, disappointed, very critical, but if I use maybe judgmental, which...
You become human.
All right, yeah, you can say that. But then for me by now, because of the story I told you, and because it happens a lot, and because the philosophy of AA of 12-step is you got to love. The whole story is you got to love and figure out how to love, and not how to love those who say exactly what you want them to say. That's easy. How to love those who say what you don't want them to say.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing. It's a challenge, not very difficult.
The challenge for me is I'm the same way regardless. And I turn what I have to do for myself is I turn ego into humanity.
Yeah.
When I hear that, when I hear my beef, and everybody has their own way of living. That's number one. It's their life. It's not my life. But when I'm in a meeting and I hear just the slogans and words on this page, and it says on this page, and words from a page and not words from experience or words from your life, then I know that they don't have it. They don't have it. And that's okay. So, but it turned out to be okay through that process of surrendering. I'm like, oh, this guy doesn't have it. And then God started, I would say to myself, God would say to me, however you want to say it, they don't have it yet, but at least they're in the right place.
That's right.
Where they can get it. Now, is it my responsibility to participate all the time? I can't show up to every fight. But what I do is I try to just take a deep breath and enjoy the show.
That's it. Yeah.
And say, this is part of the whole plan too. And when it comes around to me, or if I raise my hand, this is my story. My story is that most of my prayers, I would say over 90%, begin and end with thank you.
Yeah.
And it's turned into that over many years,
Yeah.
But thank you is a full prayer for me. Now, I can get into all these other things, and I have, and I pray and I meditate in the sauna, and I can get very fancy.
Yeah.
But for me, when I wake up in the morning and before coffee, before listening to books, before anything, when I'm just laying there and I say thank you, and then I thank you, I cannot believe I have the opportunity for this life. And thank you that my job today is really is to just make him proud. That's it. That's the whole show. And sometimes I'm not graceful, and that's okay too, because it's not nobody. I'm not perfect either on the pulpit, talking about 11. When I talk about 11 step, remember I came to the Zoom meeting once when they asked me to speak about it, and I didn't know how people were going to react. When I said, when I pray and I say thank you in the morning, I put my hand on my woman, and my skin touches her skin, and the Lord is there. And because this is a physical manifestation of how lucky I am and how blessed I am, and I need to treat this life with a lot of love, You know, that's the first thing I do is I put my hand on her and say, like, so that way, to me, it's not theory. Like you said, it's not a thought. It's a feeling. I feel it right away in my heart.
That's right.
You know, and that's where I can, but it's taken, you know, however many years to get there.
I tell you something about saying thank you. So 20 years, when I pray in Hebrew with my eyes closed and English with my eyes open. And I say a lot of thank yous. First, thank you to, you know, my son, Taja, Tamra, my mom, my dad, and then Batsheva, my in-laws. And then thank you for my wealth, my health, all the beauty, every breath. A lot of thank yous like this, 30 maybe. And up until about 2 years ago, it was thank you for all the good stuff. It was all my health, my wealth, the love in my life, right? All that. And about 2 years ago, I started to thank God for death, for fear, for pain, and for madness. And it's pretty, for me, a big thing that happens when I pray is I'm being very intimate with words. Words comes to life. So when I say thank you for Tamra, I'm thinking it's thank you, God, for Tamra, and the whole, you know, comes to life. And the words, that's why prayer is so important, saying the words. And it's a pretty amazing thing when I say it every day, I say thank you for death. And I feel so alive. I'm 64, so, you know, the topic of death is, you know, is in the picture.
You have more days behind you than in front of you.
Right, exactly. And it's, and I feel so alive, and I think I feel much less scared of dying. And when I say thank you for madness, I feel as sane as can be. I know what's going on. I'm on solid ground. And the same goes a little bit different way for pain and for fear. I don't experience a lot of fear. I feel very courageous when I say thank you for fear. And pain, it's just, all right, more doable.
I personally enjoy the fear because the fear gives me the opportunity to be brave. I cannot
That's
be
true.
brave on my own. I need that opportunity.
Right.
And I need, for me, what I focus on a lot, and this is important. It's and again, it's perspective, and this is just my opinion. You know, when people say these things that you know, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, right? And I don't know, I never really loved that saying, but after analysis and experience in my life, it's like, no, God always gives you more than you can handle. That's why you need him. If you could handle it on your own, what would you need him for? What would you need the rest of us? It's always more than you can handle. He knows, and he's proud. Like, you know, it's in. So I need the opportunity to be courageous and to be brave. When everything is going right, all the clients are happy, money's flowing in, everybody's complying, that's when I'm dangerous. That's when idle time is dangerous for me.
That's right.
When there are fires that need to be put out, when I need to face myself and then face life and, you know, pay what I owe, whatever that is, that's when, like, I can be a good example to my kids and to everybody else that this is how you do it without drinking and drugging and womanizing and like all these other things.
Right.
But I could never do that alone. I need, number one, God in my life, and number two, the rest of you. This is assisted living.
Absolutely, John.
Yeah. All right, we're going to wrap up. Listen, everybody, you just got a treat. Thank you so much, Yariv.
Thank you, Jared.
I love you. Happy anniversary.
Hey.
All right. All right, guys. Peace. Okay, everybody. We'd like to thank you for joining us on the Spiritual Experience. Please don't forget to like and subscribe on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, Pandora, everywhere. And please find us on Facebook, where you can become part of our family. We'll see you around.